Good morning. It's Jeffrey Christian of CPM Group. It's just before 10:30 on Friday, June 7th here in New York. I want to talk today about central bank gold. There's been a lot of discussion about central banks loading up on gold and dumping the dollar. In terms of the dollar, I will say this. There was a very interesting report on Reuters last week. Think tank in London did a survey of central bank reserve managers, and 18% of the central bank reserve managers who responded said they plan to add to their dollar positions over the next 12 to 24 months. So insofar as you keep hearing about how central banks are dumping dollars, at least 1/5 of them don't believe that. And in fact, if you look at the aggregate data, you see that central banks actually are adding dollars to their reserves month in, month out, pretty much. But let's focus on gold. These are the figures for central banks that have added gold to their monetary reserves in the first 4 months of this year. 17 central banks have bought gold so far this year, and 7 have sold gold. I think if you look at last year, it was probably like 20 central banks in total added gold to their reserves, and about 21 sold some gold. You know, the major sellers, Uzbekistan, needing foreign exchange, and the Philippines and Thailand were probably the next bigger ones. In total, about 1.27 million ounces of gold sold by those 7 central banks over the course of the first 4 months. On the positive side, you have 17 central banks that have added about 5.66 million ounces of gold. The largest of them is Russia, which is basically financing its economy and its war effort with gold. And I'll get back to that in a minute. Turkey has also been adding gold to its reserves, having sold some gold in previous years. And China has been adding gold, but not at the pace that a lot of gold promoters would have you believe. These are the aggregate totals of central bank gold purchases and reductions since, the big chart is just since the beginning of 2022, because that's what I wanted to focus on. The smaller chart actually goes back to 2004. And you can see from 2004 to 2010, the residual of that long period of central bank disposal of gold by major central banks that had 70, 80, 90, 95%, 97% of their monetary reserves in gold by virtue of the fact that they had accumulated gold from the late 1940s into 1971 during the Bretton Woods dollar gold international currency regime, in which central banks would collect dollars that were used to buy goods to be imported into the United States or other places, because other countries were paying for imports with dollars, and then they would take those dollars to the Treasury and exchange them for gold at $35 an ounce up until 1971. You can see that ended pretty much around 2010. Those central banks that had wanted to sell some of their gold had sold the gold they wanted to sell by 2010. And since that time, those major central banks, by and large, have not been major sellers of gold. It's been other countries. Meanwhile, you have other countries that were not big trading counterparts prior to 1971 that had most of their reserves in dollars or other currencies, and they have been diversifying into gold. And they've been buying about 10 million ounces of gold a year on average. You can see, there was one year where more than 30 million ounces of gold was added to central bank monetary reserves. I will point out that a big part of that was actually purchased in earlier years, but it was added to the monetary reserves in 2015. But basically, on average, central banks have been buying about 10 million ounces of gold a year. They bought, I think, 11 million ounces in 2022, about 13 million ounces in 2023, and we're projecting that they'll buy 10 or 11 million ounces again this year. But on the left-hand side, you can see the monthly purchases, net additions to monetary reserves in yellow, net reductions in gross reductions in red, and then the black line is the net. And you can see that central bank purchases have been basically in this channel mostly 1 to 2 million ounces, 1 to 3 million ounces. There was that period of time in the middle of 2023 where you saw it spike up to 2.5, 3.5, almost 4 million ounces on a monthly basis. But by and large, you can see it's pretty much been sideways. And you can also see that after that mid-2023 spike in purchases, the gross purchases and the net purchases have come back down into that 1 to 2 million ounce range. So central banks, at least since the middle of last year, have not been dumping dollars and rushing into gold, despite what promoters and other people will tell you. It's just not happening. Right? So this is the aggregate. Let's look at China. China basically stopped buying gold for its monetary reserves in the middle of 2019 when the gold price rose above $1,350. And the People's Bank of China did not buy any more gold until November of 2022. Price of gold had spiked up in early 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, and the price got up to like $2,046. And by November, it had fallen down to $1,640, about a 20% decline, I guess. And the People's Bank of China, which was watching a glut of gold being sold by private entities and institutional investors and jewelers who had excess inventories building up in the Chinese gold market. And the People's Bank of China, starting in November, bought gold. Bought a little bit more than 1 million ounces in November, a little bit less than 1 million ounces in December of 2022. It continued to buy through 2023. But you can see, starting in the fourth quarter of 2023, the monthly purchases declined rather sharply. And they're down to, I think, about 160,000 ounces a month now, down from 1 million ounces a month at the end of 2022. So People's Bank of China is not racing to load up on gold. The right-hand chart shows you the actual levels of the People's Bank of China gold reserves. And I should qualify what I mean by actual. These are CPM Group's estimates this is only through 2022, so these are actually accurate figures. We have other numbers going back to 2010, 2015, where we have taken the People's Bank of China's actual additions to monetary reserves of gold, and we've dispersed them over time because that was gold that was actually purchased in the Chinese market over time and then added as one big chunk into the thing. And we have had to make estimates for that period of time, really prior to 2015, because of the episodic nature of what the People's Bank of China was doing. Now, I should point that out. Prior to 2015, the People's Bank of China would accumulate gold in a special side account and then from time to time add it to their monetary reserves. So their monetary reserves would jump up, and then they would be flat for an extended period of time, and then they would jump up again. And that happened several times. It happened in 2001, in the early Audis, 2001, 2002, when the People's Bank of China ceased to be the national market maker as the national buyer and seller within China. And then it happened again one or two more times, the last time being 2015. In 2015, the People's Bank of China changed its monetary policies, its currency market policies, and its gold policies, And it stated that going forth, it would continue to buy gold, and it would report it on a monthly basis as it added gold to its monetary reserves. And since 2015, it has done exactly that. You can see here, into late 2022, the People's Bank of China's gold reserves were relatively stable, a little bit below 63 million ounces. And then beginning in November of 2022, they started buying and they started adding gold to their reserves to the point where they have about 73 million ounces of gold as of the end of April. And they continue to buy. But they're not buying at the rate that they bought in 2023 or in the last 2 months of 2022. They're price sensitive and they're paying attention to the market. The other country is Russia. Russia has been the largest buyer of gold. The chart on the left are the net monthly purchases and sales, or additions to monetary reserves and reductions to monetary reserves. The Russian central bank is using gold basically to finance the war and the economy. And something close to 3/4 of the Russian economy is now basically a war economy. But given sanctions and a variety of other problems, including the incredible expenses in prosecuting the invasion of Ukraine, the central bank has been buying this stuff. When it has extra cash, usually in the form of dollars and euros, it will buy gold domestically and add it to the reserves. When it needs cash, which is, as you can see here, over the course of 2023, pretty much every other month, it will sell gold. Over the last 3 months, it's been a buyer of gold, and you can see that it's gotten up to about 76.5 million ounces of gold in its monetary reserves right now. That's all I have for you. The point that I wanted to make is that, yes, central banks are buying gold. They've been buying gold at approximately the same pace for about 16 years now. They're not rushing into buying gold. There's definitely some price sensitivity. In late 2022, when the price was $16.40, it was easier to justify adding gold to your reserves than it is in the first 4 months of this year, when the price has been averaging close to $2,400 over the last 2 months. And yes, I do realize that the price of gold's off about $54 today as I speak from yesterday, and it's now down to about $2,340. Silver, platinum, palladium, copper, and a host of other assets have dropped sharply today, so it's nothing specific to the gold market or the silver market that has caused financial markets and institutional investors and individual investors to say, let me sell some of these assets. That's all I have for today. Take care. Have a good weekend. Take care of yourself. Take care of people around you. Try to do something good for the world. And if you're going to go on the internet, go on to the good part of the internet and read the good stuff. Don't spend your time reading for confirmation of your worst fears and conspiracy theories. You can go to CPM Group's website, cpmgroup.com. There are a lot of free reads and videos that you can read there. And if you think that we can help you manage your exposure to precious metals and commodities, write to us at info@cpmgroup.com, and we'll start a dialogue to see what we can do for you. That's all I have. Take care. I'll speak to you next week.